you will never become rich being a teacher.
It's just unfortunate that sometimes we don't have the resources that we need in our area to hold on to our staff.
One thing we know about West Virginians is that they take care of each other.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining Eyewitness News. We welcome you to the Charleston Light Opera Guild as we bring you our town hall on the future of education in Appalachia. What's working and what's broken. I'm Gina Marini, and I'm so excited to have you with us tonight. West Virginia faces persistent teacher shortages, ongoing learning losses, and debates over school choice. Communities are grappling with how best to educate the next generation. And this town hall, it explores the challenges and innovations shaping Appalachian classrooms and asks what must change to give our kids a fighting chance. We are joined by our panelists tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with this end. Larry Pack, who is the West Virginia State Treasurer, welcome. And next to him is William Hassefluke, who is the Jackson County Superintendent and President of West Virginia Association of School Administrators. And then next to him is Dale Lee, who is the Education West Virginia Co-President. Welcome, everybody. Next to him is Tamaya Browder. She is the K-12 Education Research for West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy. Welcome. Melissa Ruddle, Kanawha County Schools Deputy Superintendent, welcome. And Charleston City Councilman, Assistant Principal of Capitol High School, Larry Moore. Well, welcome, everybody. We are so excited to have you here with us. So on a positive note, the West Virginia Board of Education received results from the 2024-2025 student assessment showing improvements in all core subject areas. Now, overall, the data shows a 3% increase in proficiency in English, language arts, 2% increase in math, and 1% increase in science. Now, according to that report, 48 out of 55 counties improved in math, with 26 of them meeting or exceeding annual growth, the targets set by the West Virginia Department of Education. In English, 52 counties showed improved proficiency, with 30 of them meeting or exceeding the annual growth target.
It's the dedication of superintendents and principals and teachers really buying into the components of the Third Grade Success Act. There's a lot of work on identifying individual students' needs, individual weaknesses and skill gaps that they have, and then providing them with the opportunity to get customized interventions and improvement plans. So I think the adoption of the science of reading, which we've been involved in, this going on our third year, really honing in on phonemic awareness and phonics and making sure that we have those foundational skills in place, is starting to show a huge impact as we look at our assessment scores across the curriculums or across the subject areas.
And now I want to hear from the panelists tonight about what they believe is working and what's not working when it comes to education. This is the question I'm going to ask each of you. You each have about a minute to answer. Let me grab my timer here because, hold on. Here we go. We're going to start with this end. So, Treasurer Larry Pack, what do you believe is working and not working with education in West Virginia?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here and be with this learned council. Really what's working, I think we've done a lot of good things in the last few years. The Third Grade Success Act, we were seeing a really great dividends from that. But it really all starts with our teachers, with our administrators, and how they really got back to the basics over the last few years. And we're seeing a lot of success, a lot of movement. I think the communities and school program that were started in the Justice Administration is also paying dividends, where we're going after each child. We're trying to do everything we can to help them be a success, to help them stay in school. So we have a lot of things going in the right direction. We've done the teacher raises for over four or 5 years of teacher raises. We need to keep going. But I do think there's a really renewed commitment from all the different parties, all the different stakeholders, to do everything we can to move West Virginia's education forward.
What do you believe is not working?
I think part of the problems, some of the things we need to work on, particularly on, I'll say, the public K-12 side, is we need more local control. We need to allow, I think, the various counties to basically experiment and do different things and not be pigeonholed to do things just one way. We need to get rid of regulations. Over the last 10 years, we've increased so many regulations in what we call Chapter 18 that's really making it harder and harder for the counties to flex.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. We're going to move on to Jackson County Superintendent William Hasseflug. What do you think is working and what do you think is not working?
Thanks so much for having me. I do appreciate it. First and foremost, it's the great people of West Virginia and the great teachers that we have there and our administrators, our staff, our employees, everyone in West Virginia. We're truly blessed. Sometimes we take that for granted. And that's where it all begins. But great people in our community will make a difference every single day. But what's working? Everything's working. I believe our educational system right now is as strong as it's ever got. And people say, oh, wait a second, and we'll get to that here in just a second. And I'll say yes, and I'll defend that for the simple fact that we offer more opportunities. My daughter with the college lecture at Morris University, she goes into 33, 34 credit hours. That opportunity is not given to me. We have students in apprenticeships. We have CTE clears. We have early college programs. We have work-based learning. That is what's working. And not only that, is the detailed process. And I look at teaching and learning as a process. We can focus on outcomes, but it's the process that gets us to the outcomes. And right now, with very detailed process in our education system that is working, we're getting a lot of data disaggregation, a lot of early intervention. That's more negative.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to Mr. Lee. What do you think is working and what do you think is not working?
Well, I think our education system's in good shape. One of the things you'll hear is how we're highest in the nation in certain test scores. That's an 8 test score that's given to 13% of the fourth graders, 18% of the eighth graders. It's a random selection. That's not a true assessment of where we are. Why are we not talking about we're in the top 5 in the nation and the gains that we've made in educational increases since COVID? Why are we not talking about, we talk about being 50th in the nation in our SAT score, and that's a true statistic because every junior takes the SAT. It's a college entrance exam. When we look at the ACT, we're actually 25th in the nation in the ACT scores. So we're doing really well. 85% of our kids that take AP exams pass them. 90% or plus of our career and technical students go on to become licensed in their field or go to higher education. We're in the top 5 in the nation in our child nutrition program. We've been top 10 in the nation in our pre-K program. We're doing really good things, but we would rather focus on a couple of negatives than we are the positives.
Okay, thank you so much. Speak up. Okay. Just project a little bit more. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to Maya Browder. What do you think is working and what do you think is not working?
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to join in on this conversation. I would agree with Mr. Hassatu. I think our public education system in the state of West Virginia is working. Serving more than 240,000 children across our state, providing you with a free, comprehensive education at public schools like OSU. Is getting them access to the resources and services, whether that's school meals, mental and behavioral health supports, college preparation, or career and technical education. We are serving youth on all backgrounds all across the state of West Virginia and preparing them for a successful future. Areas where we can improve our education system, we can increase investment in public education, protect funding streams that provide funding to public education, and make sure that our schools are able to operate across our state. We can also address discipline disparities that we have across different student groups, as well as really investing in our workforce, making sure that our teachers, our school counselors, social workers, everyone that plays a role in educating our students is able to have a quality compensation and benefits as they're serving each of our state.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Ms. Runnell. What do you think is working and what do you think is not working?
Thank you. As other people said, I'm a great believer of public education in our state, and I do believe that it's working. I think since COVID, we had some dips and we have come back. Like our schools are getting higher since we come back, but I think we also learned a great lesson in education since then. So we're spending a lot more time personalizing education for students, making education fit our students that have been students fit into a certain Owen education. So that might mean students have been virgin school part
part of the day, maybe they're in our schools. The other part of the day, he was just looking at lots of different options. Some students are taking dual credit courses while going to CTE centers. So I also think the focus we have in our state on reading, kind of bring up reading scores. We have teachers all over our state that have been getting training in the letters program, and our reading scores have gone up. I am concerned about the enrollment falling in our state, in our schools. We are having to start looking at consolidating schools, and that's a concern. We're losing community schools, and that bothers me.
Okay.
Kind of goes into it, it's another issue.
Okay. Thank you so much. And Councilman Moore, what do you think is working? What do you think is not working?
What I think is working is that we have support from our own county, but I should say, as in our school, a lot of professional development to make sure each kid is getting what they need to be successful. We've been allowed the freedom to find out what works for our kid, because each school is different, each community is different, and so what might work at that school won't work at my school. We've had the freedom to find what we need to get our kids going to make them successful. What I see is not working is the negativity, because what happens at times is that one school might have shot maybe a percentage point, but they still get dogged out by people. And it needs to be this upliftment of everybody, and constantly a win is a win, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to compare this school to that school. It's a lot of back and forth bickering, but we should just champion each victory for each student, because not everybody learns the same or have the same type of lifestyle at home.
Okay. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for our Education Town Hall. I'm going to jump back into that report, and while the report is promising, according to usnews.com, West Virginia ranks 47th in the nation. So how can we keep this momentum going? How can we keep the education scores going up and better the education in West Virginia? Anybody wants to jump in and take the lead on that answer?
Well, one of the things we needed to do is to continue to make the investment in public education. We're seeing strides in our K-3 with the program that we have with putting more eyes in place, but it's going to take go through all this great grades and see the improvements there. We're doing things right with our career and technical centers, with the programs that we have, the career communities and schools. We just have to continue to make the investment in public education. And our educators, we can't let them continue to have a mass exodus away from West Virginia.
Okay. Superintendent Hasselfluger, looks like you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I think there's been a tremendous focus over the last couple of years on data and data disaggregation. As president of the WVSA, I know that most of our meetings evolve and around data disaggregation. So I can honestly say that all superintendents are taking the professional development back that they're receiving at our conferences and taking it to the principals to really dive down on those standards that are deficient. So I think that is what keeps momentum going. And just like Mr. Lee said, in his opening, it's the negative propaganda. And it's a negative propaganda that really hurts public education. And I think it's misleading to people of West Virginia. I really do. We're not 50th. You say 47th, and that's what the NAEP scores from 4, 8, and 11, and 12 with a random sample say. However, what about our CT emphasis? What about our welders? What about our HVAC technicians? What about our plumbers? What about our masons? What about our carpenters? None of that's there. In our accountability scorecard, if they complete, they get 0.5 of our accountability.
Oh, wow.
If you're a professional in the SAT, you get a 1.25. So where's the weight? And that's where I think that we have the momentum going. I just think we're just measuring the outcomes incorrectly. Okay. That's what I think.
Anybody else want to comment?
I have to agree exactly with what Mr. Hasselfluger said. I became an administrator 25, 26 years ago. And the first school I was ever a principal at, we were on academic probation. That's what they called it at that time. I just see the cycle continues year in, year out. It's called something else. We're a targeted school. We've used different names. It always had such a negative connotation. And I remember I wrote a letter to the Gazette that year because I came in this school and thought, oh gosh, test scores are going to be, these kids are going to be so down. It was a beautiful school. Kids, there were musicians in this school. There were artists in this school. It was a middle school. they were kind of crazy. 6th through 8th graders can be that way. But so many kids just finding out what they wanted to do with their lives. We were doing careers. We had time at that 25 years ago. We had time to spend time on careers. We didn't constantly have to have learning skills classes and basic skills classes. But I look back and see so many of those kids 25 years later, and they have become successful in their family lives, in their professional lives. Some of them are teachers. I look out on the first day with new teachers, and some are sitting in that room. We are doing a good job. It just seems like every year, though, the negative connotation that we're not doing a good job. And when you're a teacher and you're being told all the time that you're just not quite good enough, sooner or later you start thinking, well, maybe I need to go do another job because I can be better at it all the time. Because those are the people in the trenches. They stay after school. They work evenings. They work weekends. There's not a teacher out there that goes to work and says, I really hope I don't teach a kid to read today. I think we have to look at that. These are people, and they get tired of hearing it all the time.
Are you going to jump off? Go ahead.
Yeah, I say, like, we're doing a good job of staying like current with the new educational modalities that are going on, technology that gives our kids the best shot. And I think that we just got to keep fighting and showing that we can do it. And I always tell our kids and tell them, you're just as good as anybody. That's what I do. I reinforce my kids. I tell them, I will put you against anybody in the world that you can do it, that you are, and prove them wrong. You're not what they say you are. And I think we have good people, and this the support from our superintendents, which I say they do a good job, and just helping us get the stuff that we need to make sure our kids are successful.
The kind of momentum, like, tell me I'm not good enough, I'll show you I can do it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the need for continued investment in public schools. Folks know recently the federal pandemic funding, the ESSER funding, that recently expired, and that went largely towards supports for students, whether that was content specialists, so math and reading specialists for students, or increasing counselors and social workers available for students in our schools. That funding amounts to about $250 million annually that schools across the state lost. The amount of money that we're putting toward the Hope Scholarship next year is over $300 million once it's expanded to all children in our state. So if we recommitted that funding from the Hope Scholarship to our public schools, we can more than make up for that lost federal funding that actually provided great gains for students in our schools.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions regarding these test scores for the panelists? Can you just...
Well, when the Hope Scholarship expands to all children in our state, that's looking at about $300 million annually for the cost. And the ESSER funding, that federal pandemic relief funding that came from the federal government, that amounts to about $246 million. So you can see we do have funding available here at the state level that can make up for that funding that we're losing from the federal level, and ensuring that we're continuing those investments for students and making sure that they continue to make these gains and improve in their performance. And overall, increased spending in public education amounts to improved outcomes for students. That's increased graduation rates, better employment in adulthood, better salary and pay in adulthood. So it pays dividends down the line for students as well.
I just want to make a note, if you guys have a question, if you could just make your way to the microphone so that way everybody watching at home can hear what you're saying, that would be great. Thank you.
Well, while he's coming, I just want to reiterate that our kids are much more than just a test score. You have to look far beyond just one single test score. You got to see how successful they are when they graduate, success in their careers outside of that. And our kids are doing amazing things in West Virginia.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Just go ahead.
So as we're talking about student achievement and the levels that we've been able to achieve, the gentleman indicated, we got to look at our technology. And so my question becomes, where do you see AI playing a role inside the classroom to make those changes in the next few years? It's coming very fast, and I would be interested in your thoughts on how we're prepared for that, or how you see that playing a role in the classroom for the students.
In our superintendent's conference this summer focused very strongly on AI. We had some great speakers that came in and spoke to all of our superintendents. I don't want to say it's a concern. I think it's a concern, but it's something that we have to figure out, and our teachers have to figure out, how can we take AI and use it to help students learn better, or to gain knowledge that maybe that takes a long, I'm trying to think how to put it in the best words. AI can provide a lot of positive things for our students, for our teachers. I can put into AI, I'll give an example. We put all of our kids' test scores into a spreadsheet the other day in each one. Then we asked ChatGPT, what are some suggestions that you have that we could work with students, with these particular students? Where are the students, what do they need, what standards do they need us to focus on the most individually? We got something back within, I'm going to say 2 minutes. In the past, we would have spent hours and hours and hours charting this ourselves. That gives us more time that we can actually spend one-on-one with kids. We can delve into it. It's the 8th day of school. We already know where our kids' deficiencies are. Writing is obviously an issue for a lot of our teachers. I was an English teacher, and I sit and think, what would I do now? You know, the research paper, I'll be honest, kids need to know how to do research. Do they necessarily need how to do note cards? I'm going to show my age. We had to do the note cards and do all the research and the footnotes and all that. They won't need to do that in the future. I mean, I can be very clear. They won't have to be able to write a research paper like that. They have to be able to express themselves. They have to be able to express in writing without having to ask for AI to help them. But I can say when I have to write a letter of recommendation, a lot of times I ask AI to help me write that letter by putting in things, and then I go back and personalize it. So I think we have to teach kids how they can use it to make life easier for them in their daily work or what they do, but they also have to realize common sense, communication. I'd rather be able to see kids that are able to speak in front of others, that they're able to communicate with their peers, that they're able to have a conversation. And so we're learning every day what we can do with it. It changes every day, but we have to make sure that kids use it safely at the same time too. I don't think any of us know where it will be in 5 years. I use it more now than I ever did, just going to some training this summer. And sometimes the kids can show us what they can do with it more. So it's a learning process. It's a learning process for us as educators, the same way it is for kids.
That's a great thing about our educators in West Virginia. And I tell people I'm the luckiest man in the state because I get to travel around and see how good our educators really are. But we're ever evolving in the classroom. And the things that we did back in the dark ages when I was in school and we had the slate and the chisel and all that stuff, it's much different now than what we do. But our educators have evolved to do that. Yeah. My grandson started preschool today, and he can do things in preschool that I couldn't have imagined back then when I was young. But our educators see that, and they take every new component of things going on, and they adjust to that. And we'll do the same thing with AI. We just have to be really careful with it and make sure that it's used in the proper manner.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think maybe just a little bit different turn is I do think we made a lot of progress in public education over the past few years, but we've got a long way to go. I know we don't like the scores, we don't like being 46th or 47th, but those things do matter, and they matter from people coming into West Virginia. We're trying to recruit people to come in for jobs, to build factories and so forth. They're looking at those data. They're looking at that information. So it really is important that we continue to move forward and continue to focus on it and do all the things we can do to improve those ratings, because they are very, very important, and they absolutely matter. I came out of the private sector. We were always recruiting people for jobs and stuff. And when we try to talk to people from out of state, they're always talking about the school systems, right? And so they go and they look at this data. So it's really, really important to do that. I think the other thing to realize in West Virginia is that we spend a lot of money on public education. right? We spend almost half our budget on public education, and that continues to increase. There's no movement anywhere that I'm aware of to reduce the amount of commitment that we have on public education, either in the state budget or the county budgets. And we fought a few years ago to make sure those county budgets didn't decline on Amendment 2 or whatever it was. So we're working really hard to do that. But the other thing I kind of hear a lot about is Hope Scholarship. Hope Scholarship, I think, is one of the best things we've done in West Virginia in the past decade, because it gives people an alternative. It gives parents an alternative. If they don't think that the public school down the street fits for them, this is an alternative. This is something they can do, and we're seeing parents take care of it. But it's a small number of parents. It's 15,000 out of 240,000. So it's a really small number, but it's important to them, because from a parent standpoint, and I'm a father of 6 children, there's 2 things that are really, really important from a parent. It's the faith journey of your children and your education. So these parents are making good decisions of what they think is best. So, Hope should not be the fall guy for everything that anybody wants to spend money on in West Virginia. It's a good program, and I think we're doing really good stuff.
My concern with Hope Scholarship is the accountability piece for our students that many of them that go to some of our excellent private schools, but many of our homeschool students, there is no accountability. And what I deal with in my job are kids that come back 2 or 3 years later after they've been on homeschool, and they don't have to turn in test scores. They don't have to live with the same standards our public school students do with testing at the end of the year to see whether there's growth. And then students come back to us and they haven't grown any in 3 years, and then we have to put them in a class 3 years ahead, and that's setting students up to fail for something that we didn't have a chance to work with them for those years. If there was an accountability piece there, maybe, but right now there is no accountability. I could give examples of students that leave us and then 3 months later come back and they hand us grades for 10 classes that they took, and we have to take those grades no matter what.
We're going to visit Hope Scholarship again in a minute.
I just wanted to go back to what he said about focusing on the test score and how important it is. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't focus on that, but it's a lot of other areas of education that we need to focus on too. Just like in my introduction, I told you about the things that we're very successful about. That would be like if we only looked at Shaquille O'Neal's free throw percentage and said he was a terrible basketball player. Because look at his free throw percentage. But he's one of the greatest ever. It's a combination of everything, not just a single test score. And we should be promoting those. And when we promote those, businesses will want to come to West Virginia.
Okay. And can I just quickly add something on the school funding piece? My team, we actually recently took a look at state funding the school districts over the past several years. And we looked at inflation-adjusted dollars, so not just one-to-one for the amount. And since 2009, state funding to school districts has actually decreased by about 17%.
Wow. And
that's not just due to enrollment decline, because funding decreased more than enrollment decline did over that period of time.
Okay.
So we are seeing a disinvestment in public schools, and this is kind of seen across the board in other areas, other supportive programs like child care assistance and Medicaid. So across the board in our state and in other states, we're seeing this large disinvestment from public goods and from supportive services that benefit the large majority of people.
Okay. Looks like we have another question from the audience.
How can the public support public schools? What can we do? Should we ask of people who are running for office questions about their views on education? I mean, I don't know. So.
I'll be more than happy to answer that. One thing, ma'am, do not listen to the negative rhetoric. We have 95% of our students who walk across the stage every year are enlisted, go to employment, or go in education. 95%. And we're still touted as 47th and 50th in the nation. I just do not believe it. You can do anything you want to in public school, and I'll put that up against anything. I've had kids that go through the school system, and I'm a public school advocate. I'm a parent choice advocate. But I'm telling you, public school, if a child wants to do anything in this world, he or she can do it in public school. So just please, don't listen to the negative rhetoric. It's not true. You can say 47th, but Mr. Lee has already pointed out, it's a random sample of a NAEP score, It's not talking about West Virginia. It's about grit, character, and hard work. It's not talking about CTE and where we need jobs. And as I said earlier, these kids, they're only getting 0.5 when they have an industry credential going out and getting a job as a welder or an iron worker. They're counted as 0.5, but the students who score above mastery or above proficiency on the SAT get 1.25 points. So we're measuring things incorrectly. That needs to change. We need to put what we value in West Virginia, the grit, the character, the hard work, on the forefront, and not worry about a score that is just it's non-reliable.
Like you said on the social part, I, for myself, have seen kids that sometimes wouldn't see a certain type of environment at home. They meet friends, and they get to go to this kid's house, and sometimes they get to see different things they wouldn't see. I've met friends. I have a best friend that he moved from India to my high school, and to this day, 30 years later, we're still best of friends. So the whole social aspect of it, like we have special education kids that you say wouldn't have any friends, that if they wouldn't be in public schools, like they get to be part of sports teams, part of groups, clubs, and sometimes when they perform and they get cheered by 1,000 kids, that just does a lot. And you'll meet people that you would never really have the chance to really be friends with. And it builds lifelong situations. Like you said, I might one day, I graduate and I might have a job that, I went to high school with this guy, I went to college, and where I have a business, I have a welding business, and my son is going to Carver, I should say, and he gets his welding certificate. Oh yeah, I can put you on, because you meet these relationships you build. It's bigger, like I said, it's bigger than academics, which academics is the major part, but it's about building friendships for life and meeting people. And like you said, it's the thing of just be able to act in society.
Really nothing more important in the public sector than advocating for our children's education. But one thing that I really want to make sure that we do, I know that I do, is advocate for all different types of education. So if people want to choose public school, we want to make sure we have the best public school available for them that we can, that we can have. But also if they choose homeschool, or they choose private school or micro school or online school, they have those same choices. Homeschool is not a new thing. My oldest child is 42. His best friend when he was growing up was homeschooled, 30 years ago. So it's not new. And I think we also need to be careful. There are absolutely antidotes where people don't succeed in one school venue or another, but we need to make sure that we don't demonize that entire type of school just because of a few anecdotal information, right? Because we could pick out some elementary school somewhere that is failing for what and demonize that particular school, but that's not helpful. We know that there are schools that do better than others. We want to make sure we involve in all of them. We also know that some parents do better at homeschool than others, and they make choices. But at the end of the day, I believe it's the parents' choice, not the state's.
You're going to say something?
Yeah, real quick. Contrary to what many believe, I believe in every parent's right to choose the way they want to educate their child. And if they choose homeschooling, God bless, and do it right, God bless them. I'm not worried about those kids where they're done right. What I'm worried about is the kids who come back to our public schools without making significant progress. And more importantly, what I'm worried about is adding more and more accountability to our public schools and less accountability to our private schools and our home schools. If we're going to recognize and give money to that, then everybody should be playing on the same playing field as far as accountability goes.
Okay. We have another question.
I have 3 children that are Hope Scholarship recipients. And from the perspective of someone that went to public school outside of West Virginia.
Can you talk a little louder? I'm sorry.
I have 3 Hope Scholarship recipients in my house, soon to be 4 next year. I grew up in another state, and I went to public school and had a great experience there. It never occurred to me until moving to the state of West Virginia that my children would not attend public school. When we moved here, the red flags that were there started with the test scores. But I can tell you, I run a group of almost 4,000 parents that are parents of Hope Scholarship recipients, and the panelists here are completely out of touch with why parents have pulled their kids out. No one has mentioned special education, difficulties with getting IEPs followed, fighting the schools. No one has mentioned the bullying, the cultural issues, the inappropriate language. no one has mentioned that kids sit in front of devices a lot at public schools. These are the top reasons that I see why people are pulling their kids out. They don't even talk about test scores because they are more worried about the basics. They just feel like they're not being listened to, and the parents want to support the teachers. They really do. They're not going into it with a bad attitude, but they feel that they're being treated like they don't matter and that their kids don't matter. And so my question for the panelists is, what are you going to do to earn us back? Because we don't want to drive our kids a million places a week. We do not want to manage their education and micromanage it. We do not want to. I don't want to have 5 kids in my house at 5 different grade levels that I have to either plan for or find a teacher to manage. Don't make me do it. Find a way to bring my kids back. I have 2 kids with dyslexia. I have other kids that they just need a place that they can develop. And I'm not convinced that when you talk about outcomes and you say the people in West Virginia are doing well as a result of their public education because they're happy in their careers, I don't believe that. Look at the people who are leaving the state. The motivated kids get out and they never come back. They don't have good jobs. There aren't well-paying jobs here, and it is very, very related to education and the lack of educated people that are graduating from West Virginia. You're on the right track when you talk about trade schools and things like that, but you need to get these kids to stay in elementary. Convince these parents that you really care, and it's not about test scores because we all agree on that. The parents do. We agree with you. We don't care about the test scores, but we care about the other stuff, and nobody has mentioned any of those. So tell me that.
I admit it is tough for me, but had I got to the part about what we need to improve on in West Virginia in education, we need to greatly improve on the mental and emotional needs of our students. And we need to address the discipline issue, and most of those discipline issues come from the mental and emotional state of our kids. We need to do it in the early elementary school. If you wait until the middle school or the high school, you lose them. So that's where we need to focus on working with these kids. And when we do that, all the things that you mentioned about will subside, and then we'll bring them back into our class. Simply suspending a kid is not the answer. Until we dive into what's causing that, and these kids today are faced with issues and problems that like never before. We have to be the place where they can get help. And we've had some programs in the early 2010s. We had some pilot programs that worked, but we stopped funding those because we stopped funding innovation zones. It's time to put our money back into our kids, and part of the big part of that is the emotional and mental needs of our students.
Councilman Moore.
Well, I can talk a little bit about that. I'm a special ed teacher by trade, and I help many people get 504s and IEPs. We can talk about that all day. I can talk about special ed till my head turns blue. I grew up with friends that pipeline the school prison effect. I'm part of it. I've seen it. And I know that our schools have fought that, because right now they even have a handle with care. See, I grew up in the crack epidemic. So my friends' parents, some of my friends were on drugs and crack, and my friends would come to school, and when this is the 90s, 80s, they suspended them, kicked them out of school. So now we have a different thing now with the opioid epidemic that's going on now. We have handle with care with kids. I know for a fact that if a parent's house or something happened, the police would get phone calls, and we know how to handle that kid. We have the Community in Schools program, which comes in, which is a wonderful asset. I know that we do a good job working with kids that have needs. And my personally, I know what I do personally, and what my staff does at the school with kids that have needs that need it. We meet those needs there. And sometimes we have a lot of kids who have FC parents, so sometimes we become the infatuated parent for kids. I know we become advocates. Like as a student the other day that needed a 504, and parents are sometimes hard. Our social workers, they do a wonderful job in our school system. I know ours is one of the best that goes out. So it's a lot of stuff that needs help, and I myself could have left. A lot of my friends left, but somebody told me this: if we all leave, who's going to come and fix it? So I'm here to do my part to build it back up. So I know it takes a group effort. One thing I do know is this, that, I listen to people. People need to sometimes come and listen to find out what works together, because your needs, like everybody's needs are different. Like Some schools get bashed worse than other schools. I came from a school, I lived my school system. People dog us, but they don't know our kids or people, what they go through. Some of them would even move in my neighborhood, but would talk about my school. So I'm here for it all day. If anybody wants to discuss it, I will sit and talk about it. But I know what the struggles are. My kids' struggles are different than that kid's struggles, but we all have to work together. Sometimes people don't want to listen because of ego or your idea is not my idea. But we all have to come together to work together. Sometimes we have to get along to disagree to agree on the best thing for our kids.
And I want to say, and I do understand, there is bullying in schools.
Yes.
We do our best to try to stop that. We'd love to have more counselors in our schools
Yes.
that could create group counseling, that could work with a lot of kids that are troubled. We do the best that we can with that. We try to work with our administrators to address those issues as quickly as possibly can. But I will say, we're not perfect. We know that we can always improve. But one thing that we are trying, and I alluded to that at the very beginning, we really are trying to work with parents and kids to create an educational plan that can be different. We understand that there are certain kids, there are kids that don't always fit in that square, and put a square peg in a circle. And so I met with a student the other day. It was an elementary parent. Her child did not like to go to school, did not like to be there, didn't like the kids that were around. We kind of tried to do a mixture with the student. He goes to virtual school. Our county has their own virtual school. There's a lot of very personalization with that, but then he's trying to go back to school 2 periods a day just to see, is this going to work? Transition back into the school to try to be a better situation there, working closely with the counselor. Every kid's different. We have a lot, as I said earlier today, we have a lot of students that we are really, I get requests for early graduation quite often because a lot of kids just want to go on to college. They're ready. It makes me kind of sad because I was that person that loved school at the time. Probably like the social part, sometimes maybe more than the academic part, but these kids, they're ready to move on, and we try to work with them to create a plan that they can go on to college early if they want to, or the military. We have a lot of kids that join the military. We're working more and more with internships, working with our businesses in this community or in our community, so students can leave their CTE centers with a job. We work with Toyota. We have a 4T Academy now that it's awesome. Amazing. We have internships at Dow. We have high school students that are doing that. As I said, we're not perfect, but we are trying constantly to improve and try to offer options to students to make them want to be, or make them want to be in our schools. And we need to hear from them. We do focus groups with our students, and when we went to middle schools, we do hear from students. Yes, there's bullying. What do you do about it? What can we do to make it better? Whether you agree or whether you disagree, I think the cell phone policy this year will cut down on a lot of that bullying in our schools. One of our middle schools last year totally cut out using cell phones during the day, and it was interesting because when we did a focus group with those students, they said, it's great. They said, one little boy said the worst day of the school was the last day of school because we were all allowed to use our phones, and there were 2 fights that day, and nobody talked to me. And it just kind of broke my heart. And he's like, I loved it on the days that we didn't have those. And so, we're trying different things. I'm not going to say that we can fix everything, but we'd love to have that conversation and what we can do to try to offer opportunities for everyone. And I will say, we have homeschool students that come. They come to our schools and they attend our. They participate in our sports. We like that. They participate in our musicals. They participate in our bands. I just talked to JROT instructors at one of our high schools, and they work very closely with our homeschool organization because students want to be involved in our JROTC. So maybe they just come a couple periods a day, and that's okay. We want to make things work with our students.
And our young people are not leaving the state because of the education system or what they perceive as a lack of education. Our young people are leaving the state because of the lack of jobs available to them. Particularly in southern West Virginia, where I'm from, where I grew up. You don't have the options that you had in my generation of the good working minds and stuff. And those were the jobs. And now, because of infrastructure and things, there's a lack of jobs. That's why our people are leaving the state. if you poll our kids, most of them would relish the opportunity to come back to West Virginia and live here.
Okay. Babe, go ahead.
Well, as a policy analyst, I might sound like a broken record this evening, but I'm pretty much going to lean on investment and funding a lot of the time for the answer to how to bring people back to public schools, how to make sure that our public schools are serving all the children in our state. If we provide this funding to our public schools, we can strengthen our workforce, we can make sure that our local school districts are able to really fulfill the needs of students everywhere, whether that's hiring more social workers or counselors or special education teachers. Funding really is the answer. What you spend your money on shows what you value. So we need to show that we value the children in our state, we value our children with disabilities, we value everyone, and making sure that we're able to build up a public school system that benefits all of them. Because essentially public schools serve everyone. They're the only school system that does that. They're the only ones that are required to do that. But they should be equipped and able to serve even the most neediest student to the student that has the least need. If we're able to serve the student that has the most need, we should be able to serve everyone to the best of our ability and make sure that that our public school systems are really operating in an optimal state, the best that they can be. And so public schools are really the only place where we also have that accountability piece for that funding, so ensuring that your funding is going towards what it's supposed to, and to see what it's amounting to. Our public schools, we look at our school district budgets, we look at how they spend their money, we look at student performance, we look at school discipline and how those decisions are made. We're not able to do that with private schools or home schools. And so public schools are essentially the only place where you're able to see how your money is being spent and what are the outcomes of that money. And so, again, I just echo really investing in our public schools and making sure that we're equipping them to serve the needs of all of our students. If we committed the $100 million that we're going to spend towards the Hope Scholarship next year, we could increase employment across our state. We could hire more school counselors, psychologists, nurses. We can provide raises for school service staff, whether that's folks working in the lunchroom, folks operating the school bus, everyone. And so investing that funding can really enrich our public school system as a whole and enrich the students of our state.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So first I would like to echo Mr. Lee. So I am a proud product of our West Virginia Public Schools. I'm 23 years old. I graduated from Weir High School in 2020 as the valedictorian of my class as a 3-sport letterman. I went on to go to West Virginia University and graduated the first generation student in my family ever, with at the top of my class with the highest honors. And I definitely would like to say that I want to stay here in West Virginia. I love this state. I was a tour guide and a student orientation leader at WVU. I did everything I could to tell people about this state and this public land-grant flagship university that I love. So seeing public education being gutted has certainly gutted me, especially because my teachers are the ones who have supported me through everything. My parents didn't know how to help me with college applications. They didn't know how to help me with taxes after I graduated and started working as an independent contractor. They didn't know how to help me start looking whenever I couldn't find well-paying jobs in the state that I want to stay in. But my question, there's still a little bit before it, but West Virginia currently has one school social worker for every 15,433 students, when the recommended ratio is just 1 to every 250 students. At the same time, the Hope Scholarship has pulled $300 million away from public schools by having the funding follow the student where they go. Sometimes this is even out of state. This is really big where I live in the Northern Panhandle, because you see it go right over the border to Ohio, go right over the border to PA, because it's a 5-minute drive either direction. Also, our homeschooling, I think it is amazing, again, whenever homeschooling is done right, but we still don't have proper guidelines on our homeschooling. We still don't have the accountability or the oversight, because we're still seeing kids die in West Virginia because of abuse, because our homeschool system and our CPS system isn't funded enough. We may have more public funding than we might have had in years, but we're still ranked 30th in public funding in the nation, and federally we're having public funding pulled out from education. So with rising class sizes, fewer teachers, and growing mental health and bullying concerns, how do you expect public schools to improve under these conditions? How does removing public funding help
students who remain in public schools, whose parents may not be able to drive to those charter schools and take them there. So these kids have to ride the bus and go to these public schools. What if they have these same needs that these students who do have the accessibility to go to these schools? Their funding is being pulled out, so that student has to suffer. And what specific steps are those on this panel who support the Hope Scholarship taking to prevent further school closures, harm to communities, and young people who are bright, who are wanting to stay here and raise our children in the state? What are you doing? Thank you.
Okay.
First of all, thanks so much for your comments. Thanks so much for staying in West Virginia and for doing all the great things that you're doing. But I do want to make just 2 or 3 points. First of all, the parents who killed their child are murderers. There's nothing we can do to stop that from happening. I hope you don't think that there's some public policy that has enabled that. Second of all, there's no money that's been taken away from public funding. The public funding source it's still in place. It's been in place for 20 years. We haven't changed that. When you think about Hope Scholarship, think about additional funds for education of West Virginia children. That's what it is. It's additional funds. It's not a takeaway. That's what we're doing. There's about 10,000, last year there's about 10,000 Hope Scholarship students around the state. We think about 15% came out of the public system, based on the best information we can. Most of those, by far, most of those kids came out of private schools. Think Central Catholic in your part of the world, or we're at Madonna. 1,500 kids did not create the reduction in population or students that we have currently that we're seeing in our schools. What we're seeing in our schools are a couple of things. First of all, our population is not growing. It's not really shrinking up, but it's not growing. But we're having less children. I have 6 children. People don't have 6 children anymore. Just that fact itself says we're going to have fewer and fewer children in the public school system. We went from about 280,000 students, I think, about 10 years ago. We're down around 240. It's going to continue to go down unless we can figure out a way to have people have more babies. But the other thing we have is population shifting. It is shifting from the south and the central part of the state to the north central part of the state and the eastern panhandle. That means the central part of the state and the part I grew up in, the coal fields, we're losing schools. Every school that I went to is closed. Every one. Every school that my next generation, my cousin went to, is closed. So in the eastern end of the valley, there are no schools left. Even our colleges, right, closed. These are not new things. People are having less children. We have less population in the south. We have to have a plan for that. But the plan, the fix of this will not be to eliminate Hope Scholarship. If you eliminate Hope Scholarship, then you have to go see the lady down in Princeton I met, the grandmother, who was so tickled and couldn't believe that she had the opportunity to send her 2 grandchildren that she's raising by herself to a Christian school. So if we eliminate, we got to go tell her to do that. Hope Scholarship will not fix public school. We're not making changes you want to make. It's additional funding for children in West Virginia in education. We need to continue that. We have the money to continue that. We will not take any money away from public schools. We'll continue to fund it. We've done that with 4 raises. I was in the Justice Administration. We gave 4 raises to teachers. Never been done in our history. We did the 3rd Grade Success Act. Never been done, right? We're continuing to invest in public education. We need to continue to do so. We need to give these folks up here the tools they need to do to be successful. And as they tell us what those tools are, we need to get them implemented. But I know one of the tools that's not working is one size fits all and continuing to give more and more regulations on public schools. We've doubled those regulations in 10 years. We need to take them off and let these superintendents make their own decisions.
Well, I agree with you that the Hope Scholarship is a different type of funding, but you will also agree that our funding for our public schools is based on student enrollment. And so as the student enrollment drops, the funding drops. You may say we continue to fund public education, but that funding continues to drop, and the fewer students you have, if you're in Randolph County, you still have to run the bus regardless. You still have that cost of the schools regardless. So that funding is based on the number of students we have, and that's one of the areas that we really need to look at. There needs to be some tweaks that we make for our public school funding.
We're going to address the Hope Scholarship in a few minutes.
Public school funding should always change. But again, we're talking 1,500 students across 55 counties. We're not the reason that enrollment's going down.
I didn't mean to insinuate that you are, but we are doing a continued loss of population in West Virginia, and a loss of, particularly we're the oldest population in the nation now, I think, at an average age of over 42 or so. So it's that the loss of the number of kids that are available to us and that funding.
Okay. We're going to move on to talk about teacher vacancies. So West Virginia comes in dead last for teachers' pay in the country. Now, despite that, some are still pursuing education as a career path. Fallon Pearson shows us why the other unique challenges the state has recruiting teachers.
I had this intrinsic need that I wanted to help other people.
And so Janice Collins became a teacher and has been one for 13 years. She felt compelled to go into the profession, even though the challenges are well known.
There's always a hesitation in the profession based upon the pay. You will never become rich being a teacher.
That didn't deter Emily White, who knew she wanted to be a teacher since kindergarten. She's in her second year of teaching at Braxton County and is a special education teacher, the kind of teacher that sees more vacancies than most others.
Like, a lot of people don't like doing the paperwork side of it or like the meetings. I love that.
Around 20% of Braxton County students will start the year with an uncertified teacher. Those are filled by long-term substitutes, but the problem is statewide. According to the West Virginia State Board of Education, there are a total of 1,063 openings in schools right now. 113 in elementary, 63 in middle school, and 75 in high school. But the most positions needed are hourly employees at 212, and there are many other administration and support positions open. Another rural school system, McDowell County, sitting at 32 vacancies.
We have great people here, and it's just unfortunate that sometimes we don't have the resources that we need in our area to hold on to our staff. They leave for other purposes and the things that McDowell County can't offer, but we try to hold on to them as much as we can.
So why can't we find a solution? Dale Lee is president of the West Virginia Education Association and says we aren't asking the right people.
We never ask the experts, who are the educators in the classroom, the bus drivers driving the buses, the cooks. Last year we had more than 1,500 positions across the state without a certified teacher in them. This year it may go down a little bit, only because of the number of teaching positions across the state that we're going to lose because of loss of enrollment.
And a newer issue.
If you look at our colleges and universities around the state, some schools have actually dropped some of their programs in education.
But those who are called to the profession say you won't find benefits like these anywhere else.
We have the best school culture, hands down, in the state. This is a great place to work. Our community supports the school system.
That feeling as a teacher is just unmatched. Like, it's unexplainable when you can see the kids collaborating, you can see their gears turning.
Am I doing it for the fame and the money? Absolutely not. But that outcome, what those kids get out of it, I'm addicted to that. And I want to give it to every kid I can.
Some schools, like those in McDowell, do have programs to help, like their Grow Your Own program, where students can get an associate's degree when they graduate high school. And they say they are starting to see some students come back to teach. As for numbers, we know the state lost at least 21 schools last year. We won't know just how many jobs were lost until October. In the studio, Fallon Pearson, Eyewitness News.
Now to our panelists. In your opinion, what must be done to fill teacher vacancies, and what must be done to keep teachers here? Who wants to answer first?
I would love to answer. Treasurer Pack talked about giving 4 raises under the Justice Administration and 4 raises in the last 7 years, which is absolutely true. And we dropped to 51st in the nation in pay because the amount of raises that we're giving is not being equal to the raises, particularly in our surrounding states, and that's what I look at. I'm not so much concerned about the national average. I'm concerned about our contiguous states where over half of our counties are border counties, and people can drive 20, 30 minutes and make $20,000 more in another state. Number one, we have to make our salaries competitive. Not only our salaries, but we have to make our benefits competitive. We're talking right now about PEIA, and we see those costs continue to rise, and now there's talk of a special session where it's going to do some different things. That's not attracting new people into the profession. Most importantly, we have to put the respect back in the profession. When everyone thinks they're the expert in public education, except the educators who are actually in the classroom, that's who we need to be listening to. You want to make changes in public education? Go to the educators. Say, what do you need? Our educators are so good. If you give them the time and the resources and tell them where you want the kids to be, they'll not only get the kids there, they'll get them beyond there. But give them the time, the resources, and the flexibility to do it, not a one-size-fits-all that we talk about.
My question is, the Grow Your Own program, that's been running for a few years now. Is it working? Do you feel like you're getting teachers from that program?
I do, and I think it's working, particularly in southern West Virginia, where people that grow up there want to stay there. And this gives them an opportunity to get some advanced college courses and college credits where they may not have to go away for 4 to 5 years to college. They can do it in a couple years, and it gets them the opportunity to stay at home and come back home. My concern is we need to look at some things that not only helps them get the college's credits they need in school, but if we could expand a program that they had in West Virginia a few years ago, Benedict program, where the kids could take that third year now in college, where they're getting 2 years in high school, and get their master's degree. And then we're going to look at their pay, which is going to improve, and it's going to be an incentive for them. So it can be a well-rounded approach to grow your own program, but expanding it to where they get a master's.
Okay.
We have, in Kanawha County right now, actually I just looked at this morning, we have about 16 students out of 8 high schools. Our high school that has the largest population of students involved in Grow Your Own is Riverside High School, which I find very interesting because a lot of these students, they want to go back and teach at Riverside High School. It's one of our more rural counties or schools, and I just think it's wonderful that these students want to go back and teach there. But we've had 3 drop off this last year too. They just don't. They've done some observations in classrooms. They've seen what's going on, and they don't want to be teachers anymore.
Okay.
We really struggle with math. We're at secondary level. Math is a huge issue to try to get teachers. They have to have a real calling to want to do it because there's just so many other professions that they can go into rather than being a math teacher. And so we are having to do a lot of we very much depend on our colleges and universities for dual credit courses to be able to offer our students. And I think maybe that's hurt Grow Your Own a little bit because there are so many opportunities now for our students. In Kanawha County, we have Marshall University, we have West Virginia State University, and WVU's even work very, very closely with us to get our teachers trained in reading specialists. So there's so many opportunities out there. They can still be a teacher, but they can take other dual credit courses, and they're free right now too, which is a great opportunity for our kids. So I wish we had more that were choosing to choose the Grow Your Own pathway, but a lot of times they go a different way.
Okay. We're going to move on to PEIA. PEIA has faced rising costs in recent years and approved premium and deductible increases that went into effect last month. The agency has been scrutinized for years and was never able to find stabilization under the Justice Administration we spoke with. Roane County Superintendent of Schools, Michelle Stellato, who says some employees are using 2 weeks' pay just to cover their health insurance.
I had a conversation today with our payroll manager. We were talking about an employee who's a custodian in our district. His health insurance monthly premium is $691 total divided between his 2 paychecks, and one of his net paychecks is $749. So 2 weeks of his work is going to pay for for his family to have health insurance, and that doesn't include dental, vision, anything else. That's only his health insurance. So when we're asking our employees to give up 2 weeks of work just to fund their portion of their health insurance premium, that's concerning.
So we know Governor Morrissey says he still plans to call a special session on PEIA, and we know pay is not increasing and that PEIA premiums, well, they're going up, which means teachers will most likely receive less pay in their paychecks because of the premiums. Do we have fears that we're not going to be filling these positions because of that? I know, Daley, I know you had mentioned that. There's concern there.
I have great concern there, and one of the problems is, if you remember, we had a task force in 2018 that Governor Justice put together to look at stabilizing PEIA. And the task force went around the state and met and came up with a number of suggestions and had a bill written every year since 2019 of the suggestions that everyone agreed on the task force. And they're on the task force, in addition to educators and people there were legislative leaders on that task force. As a matter of fact, one of the Senate leaders seconded the motion for the task force recommendation, and yet it never got on a committee agenda. Mm-hmm. So you're not taking it serious if you're not looking to do the things that everybody in West Virginia said we need to do to stabilize it. We still need to stabilize it, but it can't be stabilized solely on the backs of the employees. We know we have to have some skin in the game, and I've said it a number of times, but all the skin can't be our game. It has to be everyone involved, the state, the providers, doctors, medicine, and PEI is a national problem because of prescription drugs, and we have to come up with a focus on that.
PEI is something I've worked on ever since I left the private sector about 3 or 4 years ago. Worked in the Justice Administration, worked on it when I was in the House, and worked on it recently. I think you have to go back to what PEIA is, and particularly if you bring it back to education, bring it back to K through 12. It's an employee benefit. You use an employee benefits to retain and attract employees, right? So in this case, teachers, right? So in order for us to get the best teachers, to keep the best teachers, we have to have a competitive benefit. And so if we reduce that benefit, we reduce the attractiveness of the job, right? That's pretty simple HR stuff, and I come again from the private sector. But the problem with PIA is not so much related just to teachers, is how it's expanded. When it started, it was for teachers and for state employees. But we've got these folks under the Capitol Dome, and everybody gets this Capitol Dome, whatever this illness is, and all of a sudden we think we're the smartest people in the world, so we can run healthcare plans better than Blue Cross, better than all that stuff. So we said over time to the cities, come on in, because they used to have their own plan. We said to the counties, come on in, because they used to have their own plan. We said to these nonprofits, come on in. They used to have their own plan, because we're smart, we can do better. And all of a sudden, you got 200,000 of West Virginians in this plan. And it's too big for us to manage because we're not that smart. We need to take it back to what the original purpose was, which was to take care of our teachers, to have a really good benefit for our teachers and a really good benefit for our state employees. We'll make better decisions, but we can't run a plan that is almost big as what Blue Cross has in the entire state. We've just basically, we've outkicked our coverage. We don't have the ability to do that. We sit in meetings trying to say, take this pharmacy or that pharmacy, legislative leaders, governors. We don't know, but we have to take care of our teachers.
Do you have a question for the panel?
Well, my question is, what are you actually doing to be proactive about these issues that we know we have? We talk about data. As teachers, we're in a position where we have to have the data. So share some data with us, because I just received a letter telling me that my payments for PEIA was going up, but I haven't received a raise. So how does that, data-wise, help attract other teachers? Also, you have people that have been long-term subs for years and years and years, and very rarely do they find out about the alternative certification until very late in that process. And even then, it's another 5-year process that they have to go through to get certified. What sense does that make when you have a teacher shortage? And we're teaching every single day, right? The same way that the teachers are teaching. But we're being held up for another 5 years. I just don't understand the data. You tell me that we have to do the data. So I'm working with data. What data do you have to justify the things that you're doing and not filling teacher positions? We are consolidating schools. Where are the other teachers going? We know that data shows that smaller classrooms helps to educate our students better. Why aren't those teachers being put in other schools that are being put together and consolidated so that those classrooms are smaller? You have to pay. You get what you pay for. So if you want better educated children, then you have to have better paid teachers, and you have to have better processes to get them in place to teach your children. So what are you going to do proactively? We already know what's happening with the legislature. Are you ahead of that? We're talking about inclusion, so now we're going to have special ed in the same classrooms with general ed. How are you addressing these issues? What's the data behind your decisions?
For me, it's listening to our members, listening to the educators across the state of West Virginia. As I travel around and listen, I don't know what it's like to be a kindergarten teacher or a middle school teacher, thank goodness. I'm a high school teacher. So I listen to them and take the concerns, and then more importantly, we have to be our own voice. And our educators have to be the voice of the legislature so that they will listen. They're not the experts. Treasurer Pack talked about they suddenly go under the dome and think they're the experts. They're not the experts. The experts are in the classrooms every day. The experts are on the bus runs every day. The experts are the cooks, the aides, the custodians. Listen to them, but let our voices, let our stories be told. We as a profession have tunnel vision. We're only worried about our kids in our classroom. We have to expand that because the things that they're doing in education to us is affecting our students. And you're seeing that with the number of students that we're losing. And the simple thing you said would be to put those teachers and consolidate it into other schools. Well, they're consolidating because of the funding formulas based on the student population. And so they can't afford to keep those teachers and get those classrooms even smaller. Even though all educational research says the smaller class size, the more improvement for the kids.
Okay. We're going to take one last question, and then we're going to wrap things up tonight.
Thank you. Forgive me, I lost 90% of my hearing years ago. I'm a little hard of hearing, but I'm listening very well. And each of you come from different backgrounds. You all have different influences, different concerns, and I love this. That said, we all know our population has decreased. We all know our enrollment has decreased. We all know that our children are leaving because there's no opportunities here. We know that as a state, we are the oldest state. We have the lowest workforce participation. We receive more federal funding than any other state in the union per capita. The tax dollars, the pie that we have, is split up between 55 individual counties and boards of education. Is no longer there. The money that we have to pay our teachers is not there versus Ohio, Pennsylvania, Maryland. We just do not have the population. That said, and I would love to hear opinions on this. I've got opinions, but I like facts. Would it not be possible, feasible, or even wiser to reduce from 55 individual county board of eds, which over the years have had to be taken over by the state because they're ineffective? Reduce the cost of operation for those buildings, the cost of staff. Those highly qualified personnel in those offices, could they not feel the needs for the guidance counselors, for the school counseling, for the teachers that we need? And they're already right there. Would a RESA type structure not benefit our students? Then we could use the money that we're saving, put that into the classroom. Pay our teachers, reduce their debt for their PEIA. Better equipment, better supplies for our students. Because maybe I'm picking here, But I find it absolutely disgusting that we have an entire graduating class. If we were to take 5 minutes tomorrow and ask every high school student in the state of West Virginia to sign their name in cursive, how many of them can do it? They're going to have to go to the bank and make their mark on an iPad. But I'm going to shut up. I'm going to sit down. And I'm just going to ask, what do each of you who know more about these topics than me, what do you think we can actually do about addressing this?
I'll add one piece. Like I said, a policy nerd, so leaning on funding a lot. One way we can do that is by changing our funding formula. We need to modernize it and make sure that it's really effectively meeting the needs of children and schools across our state. Our funding formula right now is primarily based on enrollment, and it's a resource-based program. So it's really looking at how many students do you have, you're going to get this much money to cover transportation, this many teachers, this many social workers, this many nurses. But the funding formula as it is now, how it's broken down, when we have budgetary challenges at our school districts, we have these financial challenges, it really incentivizes rifts and school closures and consolidations. So we need to modify that, because as it stands, when school districts lose money, the decisions that they have to make are, do we cut staff? Do we transfer staff? Do we close schools? Because we can't reduce funding for transportation. We still have to pick up kids, all over the county, and losing students doesn't necessarily make up that cost. In our rural and our smaller school districts, they really require more funding to have the same outcomes and achievements as our more urban districts and our larger districts, because they have fewer students. They can't really spread out costs across a large number of students. So I would really say modernize the funding formula, improve it, make sure that it's more equitable and that it benefits our rural districts and our smaller school districts, and also benefits students that have the most needs. Students living in poverty require more funding to have the same outcomes as their peers that are not living in poverty. So we have to make sure that this funding is available, and that will ensure that our schools are really equipped to meet the needs of our students, and that we don't have these budgetary challenges where we're having to decide how many teachers are we going to cut, how many schools are we going to close. So making sure that these community schools are still available in their area, that they're in a reasonable distance for folks, that they're still familiar for folks. This is the school that you and your big brother and sister went to. This is the school that your mom and dad went to. So making sure that these community schools and pillars are really available for students today and down the line.
Does anybody else want to jump off of that?
I can go ahead, and I'm not opposed to looking to reduce cost amongst the state, especially counties. But I think we need to go more holistic. We need to view more holistic in that approach. Not only schools, do we need 134 legislatures with a declining population of 100,000 people over the last 10 years? 20,000. Do we need three county commissioners for every county with a 100,000 population decrease in the last 10 years? So. And I understand schools, we look here, we look there, and yes, we could put this one together, that one together. However, I think it needs to be a more holistic approach to look at everything, especially government, and start to reduce in those ways as well.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilman Moore.
One thing I would say, too, is that you got to get out and vote. Now, West Virginia has been declining since the 70s. Population decreases. Schools have been getting closed down since the 80s. And consolidating because of population decrease. So sometimes you would need to just have to get out and vote, and people have to just get out and vote, because decisions that are made, the school systems don't make these decisions. Our delegates and higher ups make these votes, and they pass them down upon us. So get out and vote, or go speak at these when the sessions end. Go to the commissions or the committees and speak to the delegates while they're in town in February and January to get your point across, and it helps a lot of issues.
I'm looking at his pen here, and it's the Roan Jackson Technical School. So our counties are doing things to try to save money and to do things to help more and more students. There's a number of our vocational and technical centers that are multi-county. So we're doing those things. Counties can also look at, particularly smaller counties, consolidating their central offices and things like that. They're sharing treasurers, they're sharing different people. So we're looking at those things, but you also have to remember that to have the local voice in your school system, if you expand it to a RESA with 5 counties, that local voice starts to reduce more than just in a county.
Thank you so much, guys. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have tonight. I want to thank the panelists for spending your time here and just being a part of this event tonight. Thank you so much. And I want to thank our audience members for your questions. Have a great night. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, sir. William or Will? Will.